Here we go. Lab Coat Agents, thanks again for joining us for another webinar. This time we've got Brian with us and Jeff, of course, he's wearing the same LCA hat I am. Jeff, did we coordinate this?
Yes, we did.
I love it. All right, for those of you who don't know a little bit about Brian, I'm going to pass it over for him to tell you himself. Brian, thanks for being with us. Can you tell us who you are and also what company you created here that we're talking about?
Yeah, hey, well, who I am is Brian. My name is Brian Bowles. The company is Transactly. I'll give you just a little background on me before I jump into what we do. You know, I've been in real estate a little over 12 years now. I started as an active agent, grew a brokerage, grew a property management company, grew another tech company within it. Had some exits in there. And then about 2 years ago, we launched Transactly to scratch an itch that I had, which is more actual productivity tools for agents during the transaction. You know, a lot of the technology that's come out is very top down, you know, from brokerages that say, okay, here's a TMS or a transaction management system, report back to me with this system. And some of them have done a good job, but a lot of them have ignored like what actually makes an agent more productive. So we started out creating something that agents would want to use, right? So we've created a technology platform where agents can come into Transactly, use it themselves for free to do things like manage tasks and collaboration and repetitive things that they do on a regular basis. And what we see more than anything else is with the click of a button, they can hire one of the coordinators on our platform that use that same technology to drive efficiency to them. So that's it in a nutshell. We've been around about 1.5 years, and you know, our TC network has grown to a little over 60 people nationwide. We're just now opening up into Canada as well. And, you know, it's things are exciting for us. Even in this slight little downturn, we'll still seeing new clients sign up, new transactions. And, you know, for those of you out there that might be worried, things aren't that dire. Quit following the media.
I would agree. Hey, I got a question real quick, Tristan, about just the Transactly before we get into the meat and potatoes, because I know it's going to come up. I know you said they're in multiple states and you're nationwide, and I know a lot of people will ask, do you specifically, when somebody hires a transaction coordination, do you specifically assign them a TC who's in their time zone, or how does that work?
Yeah, definitely in their time zone. Sometimes not so much. You know, it has more to do with familiarity with their market. You know, if we've got someone that's obviously in Southern California, we want someone that's familiar with that market, so we'll assign them a transaction coordinator. We prefer to have someone in that time zone, which happens 9 times out of 10. But sometimes we'll have a TC, let's say maybe they're, for example, like a military wife that lived in Southern California for 10 years, but now maybe they live in Colorado, so a time zone away. That person might be assigned as well. But a lot of times it just depends on what the agent prefers. Right. Yeah, we get some strange requests too. Like we'll have some agents that just don't want a TC in their market because they fear competition. But anytime an agent signs up with us, we have a non-compete. Our TCs aren't competing for business, and they're full-time TCs, not agents.
All right, then Brian, I have a couple of questions, and I'm going to throw them all at you at once, but I you'll answer them all.
Yeah, we'll chop it down.
I want you to go over how you hire these transaction coordinators, number one. And then I want you to show the process that you created through your system, because I think that's where the power is. A lot of agents in every area don't use a transaction coordinator and don't understand that leveraging somebody out can help you, especially in a business like we are right now, where everything is shifting. If anybody thinks that we're going to go back into the same old world we had a month ago, you're wrong. This is the perfect time to jump into something like this, because the world changed and we're not going back. Everybody's adapting technology a lot more, and we get to be virtual a lot more. Yeah. So those two things, man, I really want you to tell us about the hiring, and then go deep and show us the back end of this, how it works. So when I start up a transaction, How would I get it to you? And what's the communication I have back and forth? How do I know this is being handled the right way? All that stuff on the back end.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of hiring transaction coordinators, first and foremost, we look for experience. So in the past 2 years, have they been a coordinator or have they been an agent? And if they've been an agent, we want someone that's really no longer interested in being an agent, but wants to work on the back end of things, right? They're tired of, most of those are, people that just don't like being in their car, driving around, and prefer to work behind the scenes and are really good at that. So we find a lot of those people as well coming on board with us. So once they meet that, we look for, okay, they've been involved in at least 10 transactions within the last 2 years as well, which is important to us. It's just because you've been an agent or a TC doesn't really mean that you've seen much. We want someone that's at least seen some of that.
Yep.
So those are the initial 2 steps. And then we have a multi-step interview process where we send them an email interview, and then they have a phone call interview, and then they have a technology test because we want folks that are savvy, that can use our application to drive things forward. A lot of other things in there that we'll look for just in terms of savviness is pulling things out of contracts. So one of the exercises we put them through also is, here's a set of documents, here's what we're looking for, send that back to us. And some of the things that we look for in that is obviously accuracy, but how long it takes them, right? Because you want a TC that can report things back timely, not only accurately. Once they've met all our criteria, then we put them through an actual training program. So we train them on how we prefer to systemize processes, how we customize things for clients, how they manage things through the application, how the billing and accounting and all those things also work within Transactly, so that they know it inside and out before they're ever handed a client. Like that's the most important thing, is ensuring that they understand, what expectations are from clients coming into us, because, we'll sell something and we want to make sure that the people who are then providing that are aligned with the same thing. So once they dig into the application, I contemplated whether I should show a demo or not. I'm gonna say I'm not going to. Anyone can sign up for it for free. So they can go in, log in, check it out, drive around it. We've got videos and demos. I've just found when I jump into these, sometimes people get lost into looking through the actual application instead of actually seeing the value. And we've also found that most of the agents that use us, they don't want the technology, they want someone to do these things for them. But the plus is with our technology, at any time they can log in and see what's happening, like what the TC's worked on, the communication across those, each of those tasks, and then what's coming up next. So, and some of those things that they'll see are just big task lists, notes within those task lists. We send canned emails out of the application. And again, these are things that agents can use themselves before they even want to try out our TC services.
So Brian, specific questions here I'm getting, just so I can answer them so that they don't go away here.
Yeah.
Tim's asking a really good question. For big teams or teams in general, can they use our team email addresses if we create one for them, or no?
We don't, no. So we don't. One of the things that we will release is branded emails coming from our system. So we'll get to a point where our canned emails can absorb the brand of whatever team that is. But right now, unless you're filling up one TC's plate, meaning one TC can handle anywhere from 30 to 60 transactions at a given time.
Okay.
So unless your team's doing that, that means that they would have to juggle multiple people's inboxes. And that is just, that could be a disaster waiting to happen.
Got it. All right. Good answer. Will they make calls to clients or just emails? How does that work?
Both. Yeah. Calls, emails, and texts.
All right. Beautiful. I love that. And do you also have a listing coordinator, or do they just right now handle the transaction once it's open?
Yeah, good question. We split it up. So transaction coordination is whether it's buy or sell side, and what we consider listing coordination, which is one of the things that we do, is from the point of you get a listing agreement signed to the point that you get a contract, right? So that's a separate or combined service with our transaction coordination. And that includes, things like once you have that agreement signed, we can chase down anything else that might be missing paperwork wise, scheduling photography, if you get signs delivered, coordinating that, putting it in the MLS. And then from that point all the way to contract, handling amendments and changes to that MLS and so forth. But that's all just done at a flat fee.
And I remember asking you this one, but I'm not going to answer it. So, because you gave me the answer.
All right.
Do you have bilingual coordinators, Portuguese or Spanish?
You know, I don't know about Portuguese. Definitely Spanish. Yeah, we have multiple Spanish-speaking TCs.
Awesome, good.
Any other languages while we're talking about it?
Not off the top of my head. You know, we typically go by request, and then once we have people that request those, we go out and find those TCs and make sure we have them on staff.
I love that. All right, and do you disclose what you pay your TCs or no? Just so I know.
It depends. You know, our TCs are twofold. We have a few that are salaried, and we typically do that after we've, you know, vetted the TC, and maybe they bring in some additional value in terms of like training and do other things. But the most of them are 1099. They receive a split just like a real estate agency would.
Perfect. I love that, dude. I love that. So take me through this process, because I've used the transaction coordinator since 2006, and I got into the business in 2004, 2003.
Yeah.
So I jumped in pretty quickly because I was growing, and there's no way I can handle the transactions myself, right? And I wasn't going to bring in a buyer's agent to be like, hey, you handle the transactions and also go show property. Right? It just wasn't feasible if I wanted to scale and grow. So as soon as we open up an escrow, we call it opening up escrow in the west side of the United States, under contract on the east side. Once we go under contract, what does the process look like? What do you need from us? Can you take us through the back end of the system just so we can see some of that action, or no?
I can. It's super simple though. I mean, once you logged in, you have to have an account first. So when we have a client, the first thing we do is go through an onboarding process before they ever go through that. So if you go to our website, you can sign up right there. And then what happens is you get paired with a success coach. So it's not just a TC, but you'll have a success coach that makes sure that you understand what's going on once you have a working relationship and are signed a TC. That if there's any challenges with that current TC, the success coach is there to help out, smooth out with those things. Maybe you're doing so much volume on your team that you need 2 or 3 TCs. So you may be assigned those, but you'll always have one success coach that's dedicated to you. So that success coach at that point goes through a full onboarding of, you know, other preferences you have. Like some agents may not want us talking to their clients. So we record that. What particular documents do we need to get for each transaction? Any other tasks? Who are your preferred vendors? That's a whole onboarding process we walk through. And then we build that into a template that's reusable every time you then go into the application and order a transaction. So once you've gone through that onboarding process, you simply log in and you click start a transaction. At that point, all we require is you to upload a contract and a few of the key dates, you know, things like information on the, you know, the address, obviously, key dates like, you know, effective date or ratified date, again, depending on where you are in the world. And then you hit order. And then at that point, the TC is getting a text and an email. And what they're doing from there is reaching out to you to confirm some of the deals. And they may have already combed through that contract to see what's missing, to see where you are, if we should expect those things, or if we should be reaching out. And then we build out the dates and the timeline within the application of like inspection date, so forth, et cetera, et cetera. And then depends on how ingrained you want to get in our application, which we obviously prefer agents do, you can then sync all those things with GCal and then from there it's driven by the TC.
Awesome. I have 3 questions here as they were talking here. I got 3 other questions in. Jeff is muted, so unmute yourself, buddy. Go ahead.
I'm watching Facebook, and I have a question here that's been here for a second. Cool. Do TCs prepare offers and send signatures? And I know that's probably a broad answer right there.
Yeah, it's a broad one. So we don't send offers. That borderlines on licensed activity. You know, so we won't send offers. We do have a feature in our application where agents themselves can field offers. So if you have a listing, we generate a unique URL. You can put that in your MLS and instruct any other buyer agents to submit offers through it. It then combines any offers you receive where you can compare them side by side with yourself, your clients. And then in terms of gathering signatures, it depends on what it is. If it is, you know, a document that's pre-filled, no problem. Yeah, we send it out, we collect signatures. That's what we do. But if someone just hands us over an amendment and says, hey, change this, we typically need a lot more direction. You'll have to give us verbatim what you want in that contract, even if it's in an email, but we can fill out we can fill out paperwork and send them out. We just can't determine what goes in them necessarily, and we can't present offers.
All right, awesome. Good answer, dude. Then let me ask these other few questions we've got. How many transactions a month does a transaction coordinator usually handle? I know you answered that already, but what was the number?
Well, so capacity, it varies. So the capacity typically 30 to 60 at a given time. But it varies. They can go anywhere from a couple all the way up to that 60 in the extreme case. What they can handle often depends on how many clients a TC is assigned as well. And that's an important point. You know, every client that signs up with us gets assigned one TC. Unless your volume exceeds that, then we'll bring in a second teammate as well. But again, in that case, you have a dedicated success rep as like your primary point if there's anything going on that you need help with.
Great. And then do you have TCs who specialize in commercial transactions?
We've been getting this question more and more. No specialties. We've had a few that have done some commercial, but look, we specialize in residential real estate. You know, my background being in the realtor community as a residential realtor, that's what we're driving forward with. At some point in the future, once there's enough demand, we'll probably roll out a commercial offering as well.
Cool. And do TCs get paid up front on our side or when the transaction closes? How does that work?
So listing coordination's up front because we never know if there's going to be an actual offer or not. And those are $125 for inputting the listing in the MLS, dealing with all the amendments, et cetera. And then closing the transaction, once a transaction coordination deal is done, we get paid when that closes. And that fee can vary. You know, sometimes it depends on volume, things like that. But typically ballpark's around $350 per close deal.
All right. And then I have a very specific question here. Paige says, I found most TC companies don't want to adapt to my customized workflow and instead offer only limited services that are pretty basic. How do you handle the client interface part of that transaction or the transaction?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So it's part of the onboarding. You know, it depends on how customized the process is. And this is, you know, where we try to also explain to people there's a difference in between a TC and a personal assistant. And so if some of these things are like marketing related, sales related, we don't do it. We are transaction coordination. So we're focused on taking that contract, whatever's in it, and getting all those requirements all the way to closing and ensure everyone's on the same page, getting that deal done. So when things start spreading outside of that, that's where it gets a little out of our comfort zone and like what we specialize in. So it just depends. But otherwise, if it's specialized in the sense that like, I always want you to call this inspector first, then that one in that order, you know, whatever the case is, or some other process like that that relates to what we do, we can do it.
Awesome. All right. So that's good. You're a little, you can customize certain things. Good.
Yeah.
Here's a great question. And only because I know some brokerages, they require that all contracts and disclosures and paperwork be submitted into their system specifically.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
We do it. Yeah, we just do it. So whatever system they're using, then they pass us a login for that and we'll upload it. That's one of the things that we're working on. That's a big lift for us technology-wise over the next several quarters or more integration so that we don't have to do the double entry. It can all just be done in our application, then automatically gets pushed into whatever TMS that their brokerage is using. And that's becoming easier and easier as, you know, there are different standards in the industry and other companies are coming out to connect all of us players in the industry. So we look forward to those.
All right, this is a fun question. Tell me, this is a good one. Does a TC read the disclosures? I find most TCs just send out just to send it out for signatures without really looking carefully. I mean, I don't even know what to say to that one, but.
Yeah. Again, they're not agents, right? Or lawyers, and they're not the buyer or the seller. They are facilitators. That's what we do is we facilitate these things. So we can't read it and offer advice. So no on disclosures. It's just the disclosure really should be ultimately between the seller and the buyer. The agent, obviously, you know, as being an agent, you're supposed to disclose anything that you know as well. But as far as a TC, I'm not sure that that would be one of their responsibilities.
It is definitely
Contracts, though, we do read contracts. Like we look at the contract, that's what we live and die by is we look at that, make sure we've got every date, the requirements pulled out and clarified and signatures missing and so forth. So that we do take a read through.
Just so everybody knows, it's not the responsibility of any TC, unless they're part of your team and they're licensed and you told them specifically to do that, right?
Yeah.
Then it's completely different. But as a TC, it isn't their job to go through the disclosures and be like, ooh, I caught something here. Let me go. And no, sorry. So great question, by the way. Tim,
would that be more along the lines though of hiring a personal assistant? Because if it almost to me like you're basically saying, hey, do my job for me, would you please? And,
yeah,
and
but
at what point?
Yeah, but even then, like you're not there if that assistant isn't licensed, a part of your team or a principal, in the deal. Like, would you trust it? Do you really want to put your liability and license on the line for something like that? And ultimately, it's the buyer or seller, right? Or their attorney that should be reading disclosures, et cetera.
And guys, if you're interested, I'm putting the link up there that to go take a look at this company. It's pretty amazing. And they're newer, remember, so where they've come so quickly is pretty awesome. Tim's got a lot of questions. Tim, I love your questions, by the way.
Hey, Brian, what website do you want us to point them to, or what link do you want us to point them to? I know Tristan's putting it in there, but I want to put it on Facebook as well.
Yeah, just transactly.com, transactly.com. Pretty simple. I mean, I think we've made it simple enough on the website where people can find their way around. Yep. If not, we've done something wrong.
No, it is pretty easy, man. Tim's question is, how quickly do TCs respond to parties in the transaction?
Yeah, so we guarantee 1 business day. So that's that. And then a lot of times and then they order it. They typically categorize those things, and it takes some trust, right? If you send something, you're anxious in a deal, you got a deadline coming up. Our TCs do a good job of weighing their inbox, which fills up very, very quick. So they'll take a look at different requests from different people, prioritize those based on time, and then execute them to make sure that we meet those deadlines. But the guarantee is like, we're going to get back to you and get it done within 1 business day. If things are sooner than that, we'll get it done then as well. The only part that gets tricky is sometimes, an agent just in a flurry of things sends something over last minute. And we see this a lot on inspection notices, like a half hour before the deadline or something like that, sending us something to send out an amendment. That's a tricky one. It puts us in a very difficult situation because you may be working on something else at that given time.
All right. So
I've got a question on Facebook here, Tristan, real quick. Do you guys schedule inspections and coordinate repairs as a part of the TC's job?
That's a great question.
Yeah. So we'll schedule it. That's part of the customization, so if they've got preferred inspectors to work with, then we go down that. We typically, in terms of home repairs, the buyer or seller will typically coordinate a lot of that. It's the people going in their home, who they prefer, who they hire, et cetera. But we can provide those resources.
That's a great question. I like that.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So here's some more questions, dude. Now the questions are coming in too fast.
They are.
Yeah, I like them. So this is good rather than me just kind of spouting off.
By the way, Brian, I still want to see the back end. So
we'll save it for another day. I think like the challenge with going through technology just without a specific purpose, sometimes people just get lost.
Yeah,
and, as an initial introduction to Lab Code, I just kind of wanted to explain who we are and what we do, and then, dig into details as we go.
All right, here we go. Are you using e-notaries for signatures?
No, we use e-signatures, right? So .loop, DocuSign, whatever you prefer. We use HelloSign as our preferred if you don't have one you want us to use. But in terms of like notarizations, those are typically handled outside at closing, whatever the case is.
All right. And are your TCs licensed, and do they have to be to send out legal docs for signature? She doesn't know. She's just asking the question.
Yeah. Good question. So the majority are licensed. We have very few that aren't licensed. And those that aren't, it's typically some of those that have been transaction coordinators for a long time for a larger team before joining us or something like that, and have very, a lot of experience and familiarity with how it all works. Cool. And so most laws across all states, have specific requirements that require a license, and some of those of like emailing documents or sending for signatures none that we've found or that our attorneys have looked at ever require a license for those kind of things.
Perfect. Perfect.
And we talked about them checking for accuracy, but will they check for incompleteness?
Yeah.
So like California has, okay.
Yeah, that's one of the most common things is we see just incomplete fields or a signature missing. Sometimes agents on the other party will turn in an accepted contract, but it's missing a page. And so that's our job, is to chase those things down and make sure they're complete.
Good answer. Good question. Some great questions I actually didn't think of, which is really good. Brian, if you don't have this might be good, something to add for your business here.
All right.
Jade has a great question. Does your company offer any training for new TCs to the industry?
It is a good question. So we're not there yet. If brand new TCs, like I said, our biggest thing right now is experienced TCs. So as we grow, we'll develop those programs. But right now we're looking for more experienced TCs to come on board.
Awesome. We got a specific question from the website. And they say, I guess this is something that's listed. It's a service listed on the website. Create detailed closing timeline and how your system handles multiple offer submittals for review.
Yeah, so two very distinct things. So you have the timeline, which is essentially tasks, right? Once we have that contract and we pull out all those key dates that are in that contract, plus any timeline events that we learned through onboarding that should happen during the contract as well. So those timelines become templates. So once you start a transaction with us, we then kick off one of those templates that becomes a timeline of every task that needs to get done along the way. So that's one thing. And then completely separate from that is, before ever having a transaction, just one of the tools on the platform is the ability to field offers. So this is what I was explaining just a minute ago. If you're an agent using the platform, whether it's for yourself to manage your transactions, or if you're using one of our TCs, you can use the application to field offers. So once the listing's in the system, we generate a URL, and then you can direct any agent that wants to submit an offer. A number of MLSs are now adding an offer URL field. And so you place that in that field. Agents submit offers, it goes directly into the system. The agent gets an email and a text right away. And then they can log in and see those offers across the board, compare them. And if there's multiple, we have a final and best feature. So at that point, you can hit final and best and it'll blast it out to say all offers and say log back in, either confirm or submit your final and best offer here. Really saves a ton of time, especially these days, like low inventory.
Love that, dude. Okay. Do they not only coordinate repairs, but manage the receipts and supplies to the buyer's agent? Is there an app for agents to use? So two questions there.
Yeah, so everything we're talking about, app for agents to use. Yep, so whether they're hiring a coordinator, they can use the application ourselves or hire a coordinator who uses the application for them. And everything that our TC does or touches gets saved in the application for them. And typically those involve anything that needs to get passed back and forth, right? And those are repair receipts, anything that's stipulated in resolving that inspection.
Is there a client facing portal or no?
Yep, it's all the same. So that's part of the onboarding. We typically ask the client, like, do you want, when I say client, I'm saying agent. So when our agent client from the TC perspective, we'll ask them if they want us to share everything with their clients as well. And about half do, which makes it a whole lot easier because then they have full transparency into seeing what's going on at any step along the way.
Dude, I love that. You want to jump in on any questions, Jeff?
Yeah, let's move back to Facebook here. Do they have to use your timelines or do they have the capability to make their own?
Completely customizable. They can make their own. Yep. So
that's cool.
So there's a template feature, and in those, what we're talking about is when we set up and we onboard, we'll create that template for you. If you're using it for yourself, you go in and you create your own tasks and timeline templates.
All right,
very customizable.
Yeah.
For a Keller Williams agent, because there's 180,000 of them. Do you guys log in to Command using our login credentials, or how does it work? Because I wouldn't imagine any other way. It'd have to be through our login credentials, right?
Yeah, we prefer that you or your office provide an assistant first and foremost, you know. So then we log in that way. I will say Command's been a tough one, but yeah, we log in and update it. They've, you know, every other system out there, name a transaction management system, is very helpful, you know, when it comes to like an integration or, hey, we've got 60 plus TCs that handle X amount of KW agents. And we're just wondering if you can hop on and do a webinar with our TCs to help them get acclimated to Command. And they're just like, no, thanks. Everyone else is more than welcome to.
No comment.
Yeah.
So,
hey, we want to learn it more. So if there's someone out there listening that wants to help us out with Command, we'll help spread the love.
I think I love what you're doing, dude. So, I mean, I'll reach out to them and ask, but, you know,
yeah.
I don't know. But John Hickey's got a good question here. If an agent has specific requirements for offers, proof of funds, desktop underwriting, credit scores, all that stuff, will you revert to the offering agent for additional info when offers are submitted through that URL or no?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but it sounds like there's some stipulations of what's required to be submitted with the offer.
That's it.
Yeah. So it's not there yet, but in the offer, it's just a blank link and the ability to upload and send it. We can't create custom stipulations in that feature yet. So if they submit an offer at that point, it's still, and it gets accepted and those stipulations are missing, then our TCs, if we're managing that transaction, coordinating it, we'll reach out and grab those things. But yeah.
All right. And then Michael's got a great question here. Wait, it just skipped. You may have already stated this, but what is the cost for a transaction coordinator? What does that cost us as agents?
So we have one onboarding fee. It's just $95. And it's because we take the time to like go through that whole customization process, which means there's actual people that we pay, you know, salaries to that spend that time to customize it for you. But then on your first transaction, we apply that $95 as a credit. And that can be either on listing coordination services, which are $125 up front, and closing, it varies depending on, you know, certain volume. We have certain, just different agreements, but on average, it's about $350 per closed transaction.
Okay, perfect. And
Is there additional fees for entering into multiple MLS?
No, that's part of the listing coordination for $125.
dude, I'm already loving that.
Any specific licensing by state? That's where we're getting that question. Do they need to be licensed in my state is what we're hearing, or the question that's coming across.
No, if an agent wants us to use a licensed TC, we likely have one for them, but nothing that we do is licensed activity. That's why we don't present offers and other things like that. You know, we do all the basic administrative tasks. So we don't negotiate things. We're not, like I said, presenting offers. We're doing the repetitive administrative things that don't require a license.
Dude, I think you're screwing it up for me because my operations manager's texting me. He's like, so when are we starting?
Yeah.
Get off of this. Don't watch this.
Yeah.
The best.
So
All right.
I got some questions for you guys. Well, probably more for Tristan. Yeah.
One more. Joe Fick, he's my friend out here. What's up, Joe? Brian, does the seller have any access or notifications of any offers that come into that URL link? Like, has that ever come up with regarding the system or anything like that?
Yeah, so if you add your client as a collaborator at the point of accepting offers, they'll also receive the emails and texts, right? So some people like that, some people hate it. That's a very polarizing topic. You know, we've got some agents that, yes, like, I don't want to be chained. Like if I'm in the middle of my kid's soccer game, I want to make sure I'm doing my fiduciary duty and getting that offer to my seller as soon as possible. And then we have others that don't like that. They want to be notified right away, wait to read it, present it. And so in that case, you just don't add your client until after you go under contract.
All right, dude. So what's your question to us here?
I just, you know, like you've used TCs, I think since 2007. I imagine there's a lot of people that have never used one. Yeah. So I'd just like to hear it from you because obviously I'm biased on using a transaction coordinator. Maybe you could just explain of like how it's helped your life, maybe when you started early on, if you can recall, as an agent, and how it helped you push you forward a little bit.
All right. So the very first.
Let me add to that, Tristan. And at what point and how many transactions should a realtor be doing before they should consider hiring a TC? Or is that basically, what's your opinion on that? At what point,
Both good questions, and I'll answer it with an example of what happened to me. So back in 2004, when I started, I went really fast. And in 2006, I said, whoa, beginning of 2006, I'm like, I can't handle this anymore. And at that time, I was doing it all by myself at about 30 transactions, right? And so the moment I got to having 20 open at one time, I said, no way, no way. The first thing I hired was a transaction coordinator. And so I said, well, I need help because the only thing holding me back from doing the one thing that I'm great at, which was prospecting, right? And talking to my clients and building those relationships, is all this crappy paperwork. Who the hell wants to do paperwork?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to do, I don't want to do anything on the paperwork side. And so that, as soon as I hired somebody full-time to handle this, I said, how can I approach this? And it ended up at the time being, well, if they can take a pay off every time I get paid, right? I'll pay them $350, $400 per each one, right? This way I don't have to pay them up front, right? It's not like a constant salary, because I hadn't paid anybody at that time. Yeah. And so it just made more sense for me at the time. And what it allowed me to do, it allowed me to do exactly what I was hoping, which was to be able to scale. Then at that point, I didn't worry about the crap I hate. And I kept on going at that time, door knocking, calling expireds for sale by owners, and calling my sphere, right? And I just kept on doing that and kept on churning it. So I think it really depends, Jeff, on who the person is. Some people are less organized by nature than others. So my threshold was about 20, right? Some people won't last past 5, right? I'd recommend lower, because the faster you can get out and really leverage yourself to be able to focus on the things that you're great at, the better. And this works exactly how I started, which was I'm only paying as soon as it closes, right? So why not do it?
Well, a question for both of you though is, what about an agent who's sitting on this webinar or listens to this or listens to it later and says, well, this isn't for me. I'm only closing, 0 to 2 transactions a month. I don't need this. What would you say to that?
Well, I mean, first of all, it may not be a fit for everyone. There is a certain, if you are highly controlling and want to control everything, you're going to struggle with delegating anything. There are certain things you have to let go. So that's step one. There has to be the ability to let go of some things and allow someone else to manage them. In terms of just doing 2, it just depends on where they want to spend their time. I like to say, look, if you haven't hired a coordinator, then you are the coordinator. And is that what you want to be spending your time doing? And if it's a matter of doing this, and instead of this, like Tristan said, working my sphere of influence, making calls, whatever your niche is, it's up to you. The only part that I'd say where it's not ready to start is we get people coming to us that do anywhere from, 5 transactions a year to, literally thousands a year. Yeah. So we also have some that come to us that are brand new, that are like, I want you to be here for my first transaction. And we push back on them a little bit to go, look, we'd love to, but we should learn the ropes some, just do 1 or 2 to kind of get a grasp of it, to know what's being done here. Not that we're entirely opposed to it, but I just think it's important that agents kind of learn some of what's happening as well before you just make that hire.
I like that, dude. I like that. So here's one question that happens in some MLSs. He says, some MLSs don't allow sharing MLS IDs, but there is a workaround for that. I'm not telling you to share your MLS ID. We have an admin access to the MLS, so our admin can upload. It's at a much lesser price than what we normally pay for. So usually MLSs do offer that. So check with your MLS. They do usually have that as an access point for admins.
Yeah. Let me see. Yeah, and they're different. We found across multiple MLSs too. Some are free for admins up to a certain limit. Some the agent can do. Most require an office approval before you do it.
We're getting a lot of good comments about my question where they said, you know, think about how many transactions you could be doing if you had a TC, or think about it when you're not as busy, you have more time to train your TC to do exactly what you needed to do in order for you to scale. I mean, the answer to the question and the reason we probably should have opened with this about having a TC is if you want to scale your business, if you want to grow your business, you're going to have support, period. It doesn't matter what business you're in, any kind of sales, you have to have help. And this is obviously Brian has built something that bridges that gap.
Yeah, but I
want to ask a question.
I like what Brian said, which was, you know, it's important for the agent to also learn the process, because I wouldn't have appreciated our TC as much if I didn't know how freaking hard it was. Yeah. And if I didn't truly understand how much I hate paperwork. Yeah. And I understood that.
In other words, when you walk out of getting your license, the first thing you do is not hire a TC. It's actually learn the business, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Most licensing doesn't teach you.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So,
hey, I know you answered a question about if you can email from a specific email, but what about the calling? Does it come from a specific area code or can that be customized?
I don't know. It's an interesting question. I don't think we've ever really had that before. I don't know. I didn't think about that one. How would that really work? So would they have to log into Google Voice?
I think somebody's thinking, I want a local area code to be calling my clients. Maybe I assume that's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, just off the cuff, we'd say, no, look, what we try to do is set up process to make everyone efficient. So, and then the only customizations are within that process. As I mentioned, like just keep going back to this one example, during the inspections, you have a particular set of people you want to work with. We'll call those people in certain orders. There's a number of other customizations like that. But when it comes into logging in and using multiple systems, it gets really, really tricky. The other thing is, like, I think there's some fear of coming from a local time zone, which I can tell you, like, most people don't. So people move or so transient now. You know, there's so many people that I know that have lived in where I'm at. I'm in St. Louis, you know, and still carry their phone number from San Diego from 5 years ago. Agents too.
Yeah, that's how it is, guys. And look, at the very beginning, if you set the expectations with your client and say, look, we have a transaction coordinator. She'll be in touch with you. She'll either be calling you or emailing you, and she's got a different area code, so don't freak out about that. But especially right now, when everything is shifted to online, I don't think you're going to have to explain that as much as you would have a few months back. So no worries on that, guys. But very, very good things. Brian, anything you want to add towards the end here? I just put up the link again. I also want to add that every one of their transaction coordinators is located in the United States, right? Or
that's correct. Yeah. Yep.
Good. Perfect. And then now that you're going to Canada, man, this is a question for me. If you're going to Canada, what's going to happen there? You're going to have transaction coordinators from Canada, or?
We will. So far, they're from the U.S. that have volunteered to do the first Canadian transaction. So we're just now getting prepared to do those and have a couple people that have reached out to start those. It's not that different at all. Luckily, similar time.
You're going to need some French speaking pretty soon.
Yep, exactly.
Perfect. Guys, any other questions? Anything you want to add?
There's a lot of questions. We might have missed some. I highly recommend going back to Lab Coat Agents because a lot of the questions are repeat questions. Go back and watch the replay. Tristan, this will be on YouTube as well, correct?
Yeah, we're going to upload this to YouTube, guys. And if you register to watch this, we're going to send you a copy of this as well once we upload it. And it's also living on Lab Coat Agents on our business page, which you will see it there. At any time, you can fast forward, rewind, and do all the good stuff there and see all the questions that were asked as well on the Facebook side of it. And let me see, I have one more question. John Hickey, you've got a lot of great questions, man, and I'm sorry if I didn't get back to you on some of them. I'm just going to put the Transactly website right there. They can answer.
Yeah, John, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to talk too.
Yeah, guys. So guys, go to transactly.com. I'm going to put up the link one more time in the chat box. and it's not hard to remember that site. Jeff, anything I missed that we
You
wanted?
know, Joe Fick wants to know if I play baseball. That's
I told
a really
him you
good
did.
question.
I said no. He just has the bats.
Joe, I used to work for the St. Louis Cardinals for many years. I have a lot of connections, so I have a ton of memorabilia. That's just a piece of it right there. Good question. Good question.
Very cool. Very cool.
Joe's a good guy. He's out of he lives very close to me, and he works out of Malibu. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
very good. All right,
All right.
Brian.
Go Cardinals.
wanna
Go
add,
Cardinals. That's what.
That's right. What's that?
Go Dodgers. Did you say go Dodgers? I heard.
No, we didn't. No, we
No,
didn't.
no.
It's Dodgers. Brian.
We got a while to wait for that anyway.
Yeah.
What? Anything you want to add here in closing, Brian?
No, I appreciate it, guys. And I love the questions. So if anyone else has more, don't hesitate to shoot them. I'll log in, answer some. We already have a couple of our staff in there answering some of these as they come in as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw a couple, so that was good.
Yep. So if there's
Well,
anything
and I
unusual, don't
will
hesitate to reach out.
reach out, and then I will tell you guys we'll be back again next month with Brian, and I think we're going to encourage Brian to have a presentation this time, and we'll probably dive a little bit deeper, more just about transaction coordination in general. But I'm sure we'll get a ton more questions. But again, in the meantime, gosh, go to transactly.com. Absolutely.
Definitely. All right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for being on.
Appreciate it.
Great
Thanks,
questions, guys. Have an awesome day.